So one of the things that I'm influenced by is the history of textiles in Southeast Asia, and I'm drawn to the use of colours in batik and the palette that is used, which I feel like is quite unique to Southeast Asia.
Hi, I'm Shabir and this is the Library Report, a series where we check out interesting places, unearth fascinating stories and meet memorable personalities within and beyond our libraries. The National Library is home to vast collections that span across many aspects of Singapore history and society, from parliamentary reports to architectural digests, from urban planning maps to advertising posters. I'm here to learn more about NLB's Creative Residency program and find out how local artists are using the vast collections as foundation and inspiration for their artwork. Hi Timothy.
Hello.
So could you tell us more about National Library's Creative Residency program?
Every year, as part of the Creative Residency program, we invite creatives from the different artistic disciplines to conceptualize new works inspired by the physical and digital collections of the National Library and National Archives. Artists taking part in the residency are encouraged to reimagine or reinterpret the collection in ways that provide fresh perspectives and engage the wider community beyond NLB. It was through this program that I met with the artist Khairulddin to assist him in accessing our collections and researching the project that he had in mind. Khairulddin is a painter who weaves narratives drawn from cultural geography and environmental history. So he was particularly drawn to 2D materials like historic maps and paintings in our collection.
Is there a core theme behind the paintings?
A central theme behind my work is this concept of disenchantment that I read from Max Weber. Max Weber famously wrote in 1917 that the fate of our times is characterized by rationalization and intellectualization, and above all, by the disenchantment of the world. Things like mysticism, kind of like superstitions were seen as backward. So the way to see the world now is through like reason, philosophy, science. So I was trying to contextualize this idea in Southeast Asia, and basically I kind of traced it through the arrival of colonization, and through that I focused on basically the effect of disenchantment on the landscape. So Shape of Land basically talks a bit about the way that the land has been kind of disenchanted.
Yeah, and tell us more about Shape of Land, like what sparked the project's inception?
I mean, Shape of Land really came about because I was interested in a lot of, looking at a lot of landscape representations. So these are from like images, paintings, prints and maps. It got me curious about the kind of conceptual underpinnings behind them. I was basically kind of trying to understand more about why these images were created, who they were created by, for who, and what was the purpose of it.
What research materials did you reference, and what were the insights uncovered during the course of your research?
During the course of my research, all the research material mostly was from the National Archives and National Library. So through their collection, I was looking at a lot of maps, paintings, prints of these landscapes. So when I took a step back from my research and I considered what I was looking at, I started to realize that these materials were themselves like embodiments of physical traces of disenchantment. So what I mean by that is that, for example, the maps I was looking at, when you map a place or land, the map supplants the physical features of the land. So the map, kind of demystifies what is around you. When the land changes, the map becomes like the only trace of what was once there.
Similarly, navigating the vast collections at the NLB will appear to be a daunting undertaking, but the librarians are always on hand to support artists, giving them the lay of the land. So Timothy, what was the process working with artists like Khairulddin?
Well, when working with artists like Khairulddin, the first thing I need to do is understand what their themes and topics are, and only then can I start to think about what materials would be useful to him. What immediately came to mind were 2 books by National Museum curators researched and published about a decade ago. Wong Hong Xuan's Singapore Through 19th Century Prints and Paintings and Jason Toh's Singapore Through 19th Century Photographs.
Yeah, so after I looked through the images in these books, I realized that a lot of them were representing Singapore from a particular vantage point that often overlooks the settlement and the sea.
That's interesting. I never actually thought of it that way before, that there was actually a pattern in all these paintings and photographs of colonial Singapore. Previously, I had always recommended resources to researchers based on the fact that they were looking for visual materials on colonial Singapore, and what they were looking for could be found in these paintings and photographs.
Can you tell me more about the artwork Lie of the Land?
Yeah, so for Lie of the Land, I was interested in exploring the systems of power that underlie cartography and the nature of its imposition on the landscape. I wasn't sure where to start, and I turned to Timothy for recommendations.
Well, because I'd worked with the maps before, looking at the plantation histories, early Singapore district histories, as well as the previous map exhibitions that the National Library had, I concluded that the best maps for him to start with would be the first survey maps, the 1830s Coleman maps and the 1840s Thomson maps. These were the first surveyors to actually record Singapore's terrain down onto the modern map.
After I received recommendations, I decided to use it as a base for my artworks and render a string of hills along a coastline in order to signify the landscape that was present in Singapore's past that were no longer around today, because these hills were flattened for land reclamation.
Can you tell us more about the color palette of Shape of Land? Like when I observed, it looks like there's a lot of movement, lots of colors infused with each other, and it creates a batik-like quality.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm influenced by is the history of textiles in Southeast Asia. One of the things, as you pointed out, is batik, and I'm drawn to the use of colors in batik and the palette that is used, which I feel like is quite unique to Southeast Asia. So I take reference and I take inspiration from that and incorporate it into my work.
With such a signature batik-like palette, I just had to find out how Khai works on a painting. Khai, so could you show us your process? How does it work?
Okay, so it's going to be quite extended. Usually, the way I work is that I would create, I would say, backgrounds. I'm going to start by making like a small sample color. I would see the color and if I like the mixture before I make like a bigger mixture. So usually just kind of see, test out. Okay. So I'm okay with this color right now. I'll create like a bigger patch. Just mixing basically more of what I did. Cool. So I just kind of roughly just cover the entire surface. I don't necessarily have a final image in mind, but I kind of let the canvas direct me in some way. So there's a bit of conversation going on.
Right.
Once I create this background, it will start to kind of organically just create random patterns. Like once it dries, for example, I would take my iPad, I would take a picture of this. So this is just like to give you an idea of how I work.
Right.
This is an example that I've done beforehand. So from there, I would start to paint, and from there I would make the adjustments, and I would see what kind of images I can use. So one advantage of digital painting is that I can experiment with colors and composition without having to physically use paint. This process really helps me to kind of experiment and test out different ideas and make different collages. It's very convenient for me.
How do you think residencies like this can help artists?
For myself, I think it really gave me a safe space. It was a very supportive environment. I was able to focus on the research I wanted to do, and I had Timothy who was able to assist me in finding the materials and guiding me along the way. Personally, I was referring to a lot of the rare materials collection. For me, it was like being a kid in a candy store. So it was very exciting, and I was able to discover all these materials that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Listening to Khairulddin's insightful sharing about his artistic process and muse has got me all fired up to find my own. If you are an artist or collective of creatives working in any discipline or form of expression looking for a residency, the NLB Creative Residency program might just be the one for you. Visit the website for more information. Thank you for watching this episode of the Library Report. As always, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you know next time when we upload a video. Until then, see you.